I've always believed you can feel a storm before it breaks. Not just the kind that rattles windows, but the kind that tears through your life. That morning in Rockport, the sky above the harbor was unnervingly still, the gulls eerily quiet. A heaviness settled in my chest for no reason I could name. I stood on the balcony of our third-floor condo, watching the boats bob against their moorings, telling myself it was nothing, just another cool Maine morning. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Cole had left his coffee untouched, which was a bad sign in itself. My husband thrived on routine. Strong coffee, a quick news check. Then I was shut away in his home office tinkering with projects for his tech company. Lately, he'd been under pressure from a competitor pushing for a merger, though the offer sounded more like an ultimatum. Cole refused, and the retaliation had been relentless. Surprise inspections, mysterious shipment delays, even veiled threats in late-night calls. By 8:30, I'd called him twice straight to voicemail. Not unusual. Sometimes he lost track of time. But by 10, when I tried again, still nothing. I told myself he was just wearing those noise-canceling headphones I hated because they made him unreachable. Still, the unease wouldn't let go. I left the clinic earlier than planned, telling the front desk I wasn't feeling well. The drive home was only 10 minutes, but the closer I got, the harder my heart pounded. Pulling into the lot behind our building, I saw Cole's black SUV parked in its usual spot. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. I was halfway across the lot when a voice cut through the quiet. Natalie Pierce. I turned. Two men stood at the shadowed edge of the building. They weren't locals there. Tailored coats and heavy boots didn't fit here. They walked toward me, unhurried but deliberate. Every instinct told me to keep my distance. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to sound steadier than I felt. One of them, a thick-set man with a scar along his jaw, smiled without warmth. "You'll give your husband a message. He needs to agree to the terms he's been offered, all of them, if he wants things to stay pleasant." The taller, gaunter one gave a low chuckle. "Otherwise, he might spend a long time looking for you, and he might not find you at all." The words hit like ice water. My hands tightened on my bag. I considered running, but it was only 6 p.m., and the courtyard was dotted with moms and kids returning from the park. Broad daylight, surely. They wouldn't try anything here. Still, my pulse pounded in my ears. "I'll tell him," I managed. "Good girl." The scarred man tapped 2 fingers to his temple in a mock salute. They climbed into a dark SUV and drove off. I didn't move until the sound of their tires faded. Shaky, I swiped my key fob and pushed through the front door of the building. The elevator stood open, waiting, but I couldn't step inside. Never liked confined spaces. I took the stairs 2 at a time, adrenaline fueling me. Inside our condo, silence pressed in. "Cole!" My voice sounded too loud. No answer. I checked the living room, kitchen, bedroom. No. Then I saw it. His phone, face down on the coffee table. Cole never left without it. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I picked it up. The call log was empty. No incoming or outgoing calls. Even the texts were gone. My breathing quickened. I searched the bathroom, spare room, even the balcony empty. I sank onto the couch, clutching his phone in both hands, trying to think logically, but all I could picture was Cole walking out, leaving behind silence and a warning from strangers. Then it hit me his SUV was still outside. He must have gone on foot somewhere close. But where? The first wave of real panic struck. If he'd walked away willingly, he could have told me. And if he hadn't, then someone else had decided where he was going. I set his phone down, pressing my hands to my face, forcing my mind to slow. Maybe he'd just gone to the store. Maybe he was talking to a neighbor. But why leave his phone behind? Cole was never careless with it, especially lately. He'd been jumpy for weeks, checking his phone even during dinner, as if bracing for bad news. I walked to the window and scanned the street. Same familiar cars. The neighbor's Labrador tugging at his leash. A mail truck parked crooked at the curb. Nothing looked out of place. Everything felt wrong. Minutes dragged. I told myself I'd wait outside, just in case. Slipping my keys into my pocket, I headed down to the front steps. The air carried a faint scent of salt and fish from the harbor. I sat on the wooden bench near the entrance, arms wrapped tight against the late September chill, eyes following every figure that passed. An hour crawled by, still no Cole. My stomach tightened into a hollow ache. I pulled out my phone and dialed the only person I could think of. Aaron, hey, can you come over? I think something's wrong. Her voice sharpened instantly. Nat, what happened? I don't know. Cole's gone. His phone's here. And two men stopped me outside, told me to tell him to accept some kind of terms. Aaron, they knew my name. My throat caught on the last word. All right, I'm coming now. 20 minutes tops. Don't go anywhere. Lock your door. I managed a shaky okay and hung up. Back upstairs. The condo felt colder than before. I sat on the couch, hands clenched in my lap, listening to the muted hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the building settling. Every sound felt magnified, like the silence itself was waiting to be broken. When Erin arrived, she took one look at me and shut the door behind her with more force than necessary. Tell me everything. From the beginning. I went through it, all the phone, the SUV, the men in the lot. She listened without interrupting, her eyes narrowing. When I finished, she leaned back. If what they said is true, it's serious. You can't just brush this off. I know. But what am I supposed to do? Call the police and say my husband's missing without telling me anything. They'll ask if he's done this before, and I'll have to say no. They'll think he's just cooling off somewhere. Maybe, she admitted. But something about this stinks. Those guys didn't just happen to be there. We stayed up. The hours stretching thin. Midnight came and went. By 1 a.m., exhaustion and dread had settled deep into my bones. Every time headlights swept the window, my heart leapt only to crash when they kept going. By 2, Aaron's jaw was tight enough to crack. All right, 1 more hour. If he's not back, we start calling hospitals, police, whoever we have to. I nodded, though I doubted I could sleep even if I tried. The clock's red digits glowed in the dark. Somewhere out there, Cole was still somewhere, and I couldn't shake the feeling he wouldn't come back the same way he'd left. By 3 a.m., the silence was unbearable. Erin grabbed her phone and a notepad from her bag, the kind she used at work. We're calling the hospitals first, she said, scrolling through a list. I listened as she spoke to the first receptionist, her tone clipped and professional. No, not admitted tonight. Thank you. Call after call, the answer was the same, no one matching Cole's description. We moved on to the morgues. My hands clenched so tightly they ached as Aaron repeated the same details. Male, early 40s. 6 feet tall, dark hair. No, nothing, she'd say, her face tight with relief each time, but relief quickly gave way to a sharper question. If he wasn't there, then where was he? Finally, she called the police department. We'd like to report a missing person, she began, but the officer cut her off. Even from across the room, I could hear the boredom in his voice, unless Cole had been gone for more than 24 hours. There wasn't much they could do. Aaron hung up, muttering under her breath, useless. And honestly, I can't blame them. It doesn't look like a crime yet. It feels like one, I whispered. She looked at me for a long moment. I don't want to scare you, but this isn't adding up. Those guys today weren't here for a friendly chat. I rubbed my eyes, wishing I could scrub away the sound of their voices. So, what do? We keep you safe, she said firmly, until we know more. Her words had barely settled when a sharp rattle at the front door made us both freeze. We looked at each other, then toward the sound of the lock being tested. Aram moved first, padding silently to the peephole. She leaned in, then jerked back. Slightly. 2 men, she whispered. Not the same ones from earlier, but they're not here to borrow sugar. The rattle became a more deliberate shake, followed by a muffled voice. Police. We need to speak with you. Erin's eyes narrowed. She leaned in again, studying them. No. They had no badges, no radios. She glanced back at me. One of them has a tattoo. I know that design. My brother used to run with some questionable people. That's not a cop's ink. A cold wave ran through me. So there, she finished, voice low. We're pretending we're not here, and we're not opening that door. She pulled out her phone and dialed the real police. Her voice dropped to a whisper as she explained the situation, giving her address and describing the men. We waited. My heartbeat was so loud I could barely hear anything else. The voices outside went quiet, then footsteps retreated down the hall, and seconds later, the building's front door slammed shut. When the knock finally came again, it was firm but measured. Aaron checked the peephole once more before opening. 2 uniformed officers stood, their real badges glinting under the hallway light. They're gone, one said. We'll patrol the area tonight. Do you know who they were? No, Aaron answered quickly. And I don't think we want to. They took a brief statement and promised to follow up later. Dada Sue, as the door shut. Aaron turned to me, her expression grim. This isn't safe anymore. We can't stay here not with people showing up in the middle of the night. I nodded, my throat tight. She was right. The condo suddenly felt less like home and more like a target, and if those men came back, I wasn't sure the locks would be enough to keep them out. Aaron didn't waste time. Pack a bag. Only essentials documents, cash, a few clothes. We leave in 20 minutes. Her decisiveness steadied me just enough to move. I pulled my carry-on from the closet and began tossing in whatever my hands landed on. Sweaters, my stethoscope, a photo of my parents that had been on my nightstand since we moved in. When I reached for the small safe tucked behind my shoes, my hands were shaking. I punched in the code, swung the door open, and froze. It was empty, completely empty except for my passport. Aaron stepped into the doorway. What's wrong? The money's gone. All of it. My voice cracked. She stepped closer, peering inside. Nah. If only you and Cole had the code, do you think he took it? Her expression said she didn't want to answer. I think it's the simplest explanation. I swallowed hard, fighting the sting in my eyes. There wasn't time to fall apart. Not now. I shoved the passport into my bag and zipped it shut. Aaron was already making calls. I know a place. Private cabins. No paperwork. Cash only. Off Route 3 near Acadia. You'll be safe there. Safe. The word felt foreign. Within minutes, we were in her car, the dark streets of Rockport slipping away in the rearview mirror. The harbor lights dwindled, replaced by black silhouettes of pine trees against a cloudy sky. Aaron's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Keep your phone off, she said. If those men are looking for you, it's better they can't trace a signal. I nodded, staring at the blur of forest. The farther we drove, the more unreal it felt like I'd stepped into someone else's life. 2 hours later, we turned onto a narrow gravel road. The crunch of tires echoed in the stillness. Ahead, a scattering of warm yellow lights glowed between the trees. Aaron parked near a small office with a wooden sign that read Seabrook Lodge. Inside, a man in his 50s greeted her like they were old friends. Aaron spoke quietly, sliding him a wad of cash. He nodded, passed her a key, and didn't ask for my name. The cabin was small but cozy, knotty pine walls, a stoned fireplace, a single bed draped in a quilt. I dropped my bag by the door and sank onto the edge of the mattress, the fatigue of the past 24 hours finally catching up to me. Aaron crouched in front of me. I'll come by in a couple of days. Keep a low profile. Don't go into town unless you have to, and remember you're here under a different name. No one needs to know you. AITA Retribution. I managed a faint smile. Who am I, then? Whoever you need to be to stay alive. She squeezed my hand, then straightened. Get some rest. Tomorrow is a new day, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. When the door clicked shut behind her, the cabin seemed impossibly quiet. Outside, the wind rattled through the pines. Somewhere in the distance, waves broke against the shore. I told myself I was safe now, but safety, I was learning, was a fragile thing. The first night passed in fragment short bursts of sleep, cut by the wind in the trees and the distant crash of waves. By morning, my nerves felt raw, but I forced myself up. A shower, a change of clothes, a careful look in the mirror. Above the sink, I needed to look like someone who belonged here, not a woman hiding from ghosts. I decided to walk to the lodge's dining hall for breakfast. The air outside was crisp, laced with the smell of salt and pine. Sunlight filtered through the branches, dappling the gravel path. For the first time in days, I let myself breathe all the way down to my lungs. I rounded the corner of my cabin and nearly collided with someone. "Well, sorry," a man said, stepping back with an easy smile. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a faint shadow along his jaw. The kind of presence you noticed before you even saw his face. "It's fine," I said quickly, instinctively, putting a bit more space between us. "You must be my new neighbor," he said, nodding toward the other half of my cabin. I'm Grant. Grant Ellison. I hesitated, then offered my hand. Natalie? I caught myself just before giving my last name. Well, Natalie. Welcome to Seabrook Lodge. You here for vacation? His tone was light, but his gray eyes were sharp like they saw more than I was saying. Something like that, I replied. He gestured toward the path. Heading to breakfast. They do a decent omelet. I could use the company unless you've got someone waiting. I don't, I admitted. The dining hall was a low log building with big windows overlooking a slope of evergreens. We took a corner table. A waitress brought coffee, skipping the small talk with Grant like she already knew him. So, what do you do? I asked. Mostly out of politeness. I work in investigations. He said, law enforcement. That explained the AITA way he seemed to be taking in every detail without trying. Here on a case? I asked. He smiled faintly. Here to get some perspective. A change of scenery never hurts. I didn't press, and he didn't ask much more about me. Instead, he told a few dry, funny stories from his work, carefully vague, but enough to make me laugh despite myself. After breakfast, he nodded toward the rec hall. You play pool? I have, I said cautiously. Come on, let me get beaten by the new neighbor. It'll keep my ego in check. I didn't mean to say yes, but I found myself following him. The pool table was worn, the cues mismatched, but the game felt strangely grounding. For an hour, we talked about nothing important, whether the best trails nearby, whether lobster rolls were better than crab cakes. When we stepped back outside, the sky had clouded over, the wind lifting strands of hair from my face. Thanks for the game, I said. Anytime, he replied. There was something in the way, he said. It's steady. Certain that lingered in my mind long after I returned to my side of the cabin. That night, lying in the dark, I thought about the ease in his voice, the way he kept the conversation light without making it shallow. For the first time since Cole vanished, I went a few hours without replaying the threats in my head. The realization was both comforting and dangerous. 3 days later, Erin arrived. Her SUV crunched over the gravel as the late afternoon light turned the pines gold. I met her halfway, relief flooding me at the sight of a familiar face. You look better than I expected, she said, hugging me tight. I've been keeping busy, I replied, careful not to glance toward the other half of my cabin. We spent the first hour exchanging mundane updates from home, telling small jokes to ease the weight between us, but eventually her expression changed. Any word from Cole? I shook my head. Nothing. Not a call. Not a message. Erin's gaze softened. Nat, I don't think he's coming back, not in the way you want him to? Before I could respond, a sudden wave of nausea hit me so hard I pressed a hand to my mouth. You okay? She asked, eyebrows raised. I'm fine. Probably didn't eat enough today. She gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it. When was your last period? I opened my mouth, then closed it. The truth landed cold and heavy. Over a week late. Erin was already rummaging in her bag. We're solving this mystery right now. 10 minutes later, I was staring at 2 bold pink lines. I'm pregnant, I whispered. Dad, Erin smiled, though her eyes were damp. You're going to be a mom. I sank onto the bed, my hands resting instinctively on my stomach. Cole's baby. The words felt foreign in my mouth. That night, after Aaron had gone to bed, a knock came at my door. When I opened it, Grant was standing there, hands in his jacket pockets, his expression unreadable. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I've been looking into your husband." My pulse spiked. "Why?" "Because I didn't think this is just a business dispute, and I was right. Cole owes a lot of money to very bad people. Not because they forced him into a merger, but because he borrowed it enough to make people do disparate things when it's not repaid." I gripped the back of a chair. "That doesn't make sense. We had savings. We weren't in trouble. Maybe not the kind of trouble you knew about." Images flashed in my mind, Cole's late nights, his clipped phone calls, the way he'd started locking his office. What happened to him? Last confirmed sighting was on a security camera outside a strip mall in Bangor. After that, nothing. My guess? He changed his appearance, maybe even his name. It was too much. I sat down, the world tilting around me. So he's gone by choice. Grant's gaze softened. "Nat, I'm sorry. I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but you needed to know. These people might use you to get to him. That's why you need to stay hidden." I thought of the empty safe, the parking lot warning, the silent phone, and then the life growing inside me. My chest ached with a tangled mix of grief and resolve. "I'm pregnant," I said quietly. Grant blinked, then nodded. "Then that's all the more reason to protect yourself and the baby." For the first time since Cole vanished, I felt the shape of a decision forming. I couldn't control what Cole had done or where he had gone, but I could control what happened next. I wasn't going to let his choices destroy what I had left or the child I carried. The next morning, a knock came again. Not the cautious tap of a friend, but the steady, confident rhythm that could only be Grant. He stood at the door holding 2 paper cups of coffee and a small bag breakfast. He said simply, I took the cup, warmth seeping into my hands. "You didn't have to. I wanted to. And there's something I need to talk to you about." We sat at the small table by the window, steam curling from the coffee. Outside, the pines swayed gently in the wind. "I've got a friend in Portland," he began, "runs a pediatric clinic. They've been looking for another doctor for months, someone with your skills. It's private, good pay, stable hours. More importantly, it's secure. Cameras, access control, the works. Grant, I can't just walk into a new job. My life is a mess. I'm pregnant. You're a qualified doctor. Exactly who they need. I've already spoken to the director. He's willing to bring you on without the usual interview process. This is too much. You've already done so much for me. Natalie, this isn't charity. It's a chance for you to start fresh. Somewhere Cole's mess can't touch you." The words landed heavier than I expected. Start fresh. I hadn't realized how much I needed that until he said it. "I don't even have a place to live in Portland," I pointed out. "Already handled. The clinic owns apartments for staff. One just opened up, fully furnished, secure. And yes, it's in a safe neighborhood." I stared at him, the weight of his planning sinking in. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you deserve more than just surviving. You deserve to build a life again, and I can help. The coffee had gone lukewarm, but I kept my hands around the cup, grounding myself in its fading warmth. What if I'm not ready? Then I'll wait until you are. But this opportunity won't be here forever. Later that afternoon, Aaron drove me to see the apartment. The building was bricked with tall windows and a distant view of the harbor. Inside, it smelled faintly of fresh paint and cedar. The furniture was simple but comfortable, the bedroom dressed in a soft gray quilt that made me want to fall face first into it. I walked through each room, imagining what it would be like to wake up here, to come home after a day without fear. It's nice, isn't it? Aaron said from the doorway. It feels safe, I admitted. Then you should take it. And if you won't take my word for it, take Grant. He's got a good head for these things. By the time we drove back to the lodge, my decision was solid. I'd take the job, the apartment, the chance not, because Grant arranged it. Not because Aaron thought it was smart, but because for the first time since Cole left, I could picture a future not defined by loss. The move to Portland felt like stepping into another version of my life. The clinic was exactly as Grant promised and staffed by people who greeted me warmly without pressing for details I wasn't ready to share. My first day, the head nurse handed me a manageable schedule, nothing like the frantic pace of my old job. It was strange to feel unhurried. The apartment became my haven. Mornings were quiet, sunlight spilling across the counter as I sipped coffee and listened to the distant hum of the harbor. Evenings, I'd walk around the block, my coat pulled tight against the breeze, my hand resting lightly on my growing stomach. Grant visited, often sometimes with takeout, sometimes just to talk. He never pushed for more than I could give. He became a steady point in my unsteady world. Aaron noticed, of course. One night, over dinner, she leaned in and said, "You know, he's crazy about you, right?" I laughed it off, though my chest warmed in a way I couldn't ignore. When Liam was born, a healthy, dark-haired boy with a surprisingly strong grip, Grant was there. He held my hand through delivery, his voice steady when mine trembled. The first time I saw him cradle Liam, supporting his tiny head with such care, something in me shifted. The weeks after were a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings, but they were nothing like the hollow exhaustion I'd felt when Cole disappeared. This was different. This was fullness. Grant didn't just visit, he stayed. Some nights, he took Liam so I could rest. Other mornings, I woke to the sound of him humming while making breakfast, the smell of coffee and eggs drifting into the bedroom. On Sundays, Aaron would join us for walks along the eastern promenade. We'd push Liam's stroller down the paved path, the harbor stretching out beside us, the masts of sailboats swaying gently in the breeze. There was laughter, a Gendriel laughter, the kind that came from somewhere deeper than relief that the years passed. The seasons in Maine painting our lives in cycles of snow, salt air, and golden autumn light. Liam grew into a curious, fearless little boy who loved climbing rocks by the shore and asking impossible questions about the sea. The clinic promoted me to lead pediatrician. Erin got married. Her reception was a noisy, joyful night where I danced with Liam on my hip and Grant's hand steady at my back. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the one I had chosen piece by piece out of the wreckage of what came before. And it was mine, completely mine. It was on a warm September afternoon that I finally drove back to Rockport, not because of fear or some lingering thread from the past, but because Liam wanted to see where the ocean is louder. We parked near the lodge, now under new ownership, and followed the familiar path lined with pines. The air smelled the same as it had that first weeks-old pine, and something untamed but in my chest. It felt different. Lighter. We reached the rocky overlook where the waves crashed hard against the cliffs. Liam climbed onto a boulder, arms spread wide as if he could catch the wind. Grant stood close, one steadying hand on his shoulder. I let the sound of the waves fill the space between heartbeats. For the first time, I could stand here without the weight of unanswered questions pressing into my ribs. Cole was gone, and whatever choices had taken him from me were no longer mine to carry. I had faced the storm and built something stronger in its wake. Liam scrambled down and ran to me, cheeks flushed, hair wild from the breeze. "Can we come back here every year?" he asked, slipping his small hand into mine. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face and the steady presence of Grant beside us. "Yes," I said. "Every year." As we turned to go, I glanced back once more at the horizon, the endless sweep of blue meeting sky, and felt the last quiet pieces of my old life settle into place. Not with bitterness, not with longing, just with the certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The road ahead was mine now, and for the first time in years, I couldn't wait to see where it led.